There is a specific way to make an elderly person feel loved. It's not expensive, it doesn't take much time, but it requires intention, and most families don't do it. Not because they don't love them, but because they don't know how. What I list here has been validated by research in the psychology of aging. It works. And you can start today. The elderly members of our family rarely say what they need. They were raised not to ask, not to bother, to be grateful for what they have. But deep down, there is a real, measurable, and documented need to feel loved in very specific ways. The language of love in older adults is not the same as in younger adults. What makes a 30-year-old feel loved may not be enough for a 75-year-old parent at all. This video will show you specifically what truly matters. First thing, call for no reason and without rushing. This is the simplest and most powerful of all. A motivated connection, the kind that happens because there's a problem to solve, because there's information to pass on, because there's a birthday to celebrate. That connection communicates function. Connection without a reason communicates love. When you call an elderly person just to ask how their day is going, with nothing to report, nothing to ask for, no doctor's appointment to schedule, the message that comes across is, "You were on my mind and I wanted to talk to you." That's powerful in a way that seems disproportionate to the effort. Researcher Susan Pinker documents that simple vocal contact, hearing the voice of a loved one, releases oxytocin and reduces cortisol immediately and measurably. It's the biological response to belonging, and the elderly person who receives frequent calls for no specific reason has a better mood, more motivation to take care of themselves, and a greater perception of being loved. The difficulty lies in the routine. Creating the habit of calling every Monday or every morning of a particular day transforms what seems like effort into a ritual. And rituals of contact are one of the most solid pillars of emotional well-being in old age. The second thing, ask about the past with genuine curiosity. The elderly person has a whole life before you came along. A youth, a history, decisions they made, places they've been, people they loved, fears they faced. And most of these stories were never asked about, never truly listened to. When you ask, with genuine curiosity, and not as a formality, about the elderly person's past, something happens in them that goes beyond the pleasure of telling the story. The sense of who they are, which progressively weakens with aging, is reactivated. They become, once again, that young person who traveled across the country, that woman who built a business from scratch, that man who raised his children in difficult conditions. Reminiscing with a genuine audience is therapeutic. Studies in the field of reminiscence therapy show that older adults who are invited to narrate their life stories with an engaged listener experience measurable improvements in self-esteem, mood, and sense of purpose. Specific questions work better than open-ended questions. Instead of, "Tell me about your life," try, "What was the most difficult moment you've ever faced?" Or, "Is there a decision you're proud of having made?" These guidelines direct the memory and produce rich narratives that move both the teller and the listener. Subscribe to the channel now. This type of specific and applicable content is what we produce every week. The third thing, include the elderly person in family decisions. One of the most silent losses of old age is the progressive exclusion from decisions that happen around them. The family begins to make decisions about parties, trips, the children's future, and family businesses without consulting the elder. Sometimes to avoid worrying. Sometimes because you think they won't understand. Sometimes simply out of habit. The elderly person notices this silence and interprets it as what it often is, a sign that they are no longer considered relevant to the family's future. Including the elderly in decisions, even when their opinion won't determine the outcome, is the most identity-affirming act of love there is. You don't have to do what they suggest, but the act of asking, of listening, of considering aloud what they thought, that act communicates, you are still part of this. Your perspective matters. You are still one of us. This has an immediate and lasting effect on the elderly person's self-esteem and sense of belonging to the family. It's free, takes less than 10 minutes, and the impact lasts for days. The fourth thing, play with intention. The lack of physical touch in the elderly is a public health problem that few people discuss. With aging, especially after widowhood or after children leave home, physical contact is drastically reduced, and the human body was built for touch. Deprivation of it has real neurological and immunological consequences. Touch releases oxytocin, reduces cortisol, signals safety to the nervous system, and has a measurable effect on blood pressure and heart rate. In older adults who regularly receive touch, studies show improved immune function, fewer episodes of anxiety, and better sleep quality. The point is that touch needs to be intentional, not just functional. A hurried hug on the way out counts for less than a hug given with presence, which lasts 3 seconds longer than the protocol and communicates that the other person matters. Holding hands during a conversation, a hand on the shoulder while watching television next to you, a welcoming hug that isn't rushed. These gestures aren't grand. They're consistent. And that consistency is what makes the difference. Leave a like on this video now. It's the easiest way to keep receiving content like this. The fifth thing, create a ritual that's just for the two of you. Relationship rituals are emotional anchors that sustain the bond over time. And in relationships with older adults, they play an even greater role because they structure time in a way that gives the older adult something to look forward to. A ritual doesn't need to be elaborate. It could be afternoon coffee every Thursday. It could be watching the same show together every week, even if one of you is in another city and you watch it at the same time on your cell phones. It could be the phone call every Monday morning. It could be the monthly visit with his favorite dish. What makes a ritual is not what is done. It's the regularity and the intentionality. The elderly person who knows that you come for coffee every Thursday has that point on the horizon of the week that organizes their time and signals. I am important enough for someone to reserve this space for me. This may seem like a small thing, but for an elderly person who spends weeks without meaningful interaction, it's not small at all. It's the centerpiece of their week. The sixth thing, to name love aloud. This is the one that generates the most resistance, and it's the most necessary. Our elders' generation grew up in a culture where "I love you" was rarely said, where love was expressed through actions and not words, where verbal displays of affection were considered excessive or even artificial. But research on emotional well-being in older adults consistently shows that hearing verbal declarations of love and appreciation has a direct, measurable effect on mood and self-esteem, even for people who grew up in cultures with less verbal expression. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be simple. "You know how much I like you, right? You were very important in my upbringing. I'm so happy when we talk like this." These direct statements create memories that the elderly person carries with them, that they repeat in their head when they are alone, that sustain the perception of being loved on days when no one is around. An elderly person who hears they are loved smiles in a different way. It's visible. And you'll wish you had said that while there's still time. Why do these 6 things work? Each of the 6 acts on a specific system in the brain and body of the elderly. Unmotivated connection activates the attachment system. Asking about the past activates autobiographical memory and a sense of identity continuity. Inclusion in decisions activates the social belonging system. Intentional touch activates the physiological safety system. Ritual creates predictability and structure that the nervous system of the elderly, more sensitive to disorder, deeply appreciates. And the verbal naming of love activates positive affective processing that literally alters the neurochemical state. Together, these 6 practices address, in a complementary way, the main psychological needs documented in old age: belonging, identity, autonomy, physiological safety, temporal structure, and affective recognition. This is not vague theory. It is what research in the positive psychology of aging consistently points to in studies from different countries and cultures. What happens when these things are missing? The answer is documented. Rates of loneliness increase. The immune system weakens. The risk of depression rises. The rate of cognitive decline accelerates. And premature mortality is significantly more likely. The MacArthur Study of Successful Aging, one of the largest and most rigorous ever conducted, identified that social and emotional factors, quality of relationships, frequency of meaningful contact, and perception of being loved are predictors of health and longevity, as strong as physical factors such as diet and exercise. This means that the love you give is not an emotional supplement. It's preventative medicine, and its absence has the same effect as neglecting the body. Only the decline is more silent because what's being consumed isn't muscle. It's the will to continue. Many families come across this content at a time when distance is already a reality, where the relationship has lost its naturalness, where visits are protocol, phone calls are functional, and hugs are mechanical. Rebuilding closeness in such a context doesn't happen with one grand gesture. It happens through consistent, small gestures over time. The recommendation is to choose one of the 6 practices, just one, and apply it for 30 consecutive days before adding another. Why? Because changing too many things at once seems artificial. The elderly person notices and becomes suspicious. But a small, consistent change, heard, felt, repeated in slightly different ways over weeks, penetrates the defenses and begins to rebuild what was lost. It's not fast, but it works. And it works because the people we love, regardless of the distance time has created, still want to be reached. Sometimes they just need to realize that the attempt is real. These 6 practices are simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. It requires intention. It requires consistency. It requires the willingness to put what the elderly person needs on your list of priorities, alongside work urgencies, children's demands, and financial worries. But think about this. When you look back 10 years from now, what will you wish you had done? Will you wish you had had an extra half hour a day for anything? Or will you wish you had used that half hour to make your father feel loved on Thursday afternoon? Time spent with the elderly we love is limited, not out of malice, but by nature. And the only way to avoid the regret of not having done enough is to do it now, with the awareness of what truly matters. It starts with a call tomorrow for no reason, just to see how your day is going, see what happens, and then come back here and tell me about it. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. We release a new video every week with the same level of depth and applicability.